Hi, I'm Joe Sawyer, the Superintendent of the Shrewsbury Public Schools, and welcome to this edition of Superintendent's Update. I have four guests with me today. The newly elected Chair of the Shrewsbury School Committee, John Wensky, and congratulations, John, on your re-election to the school committee and election as Chair. The Vice Chair of the Shrewsbury School Committee, Sandy Fritz, who just finished 2 years as Chair. Thank you very much for that leadership. Also with us today, Patrick Collins, who's our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations. And also Chris Girardi, who is the principal of the currently Beal Early Childhood Center, soon to be principal of the new Beal School on Lake Street. And that's part of the main topic today of our show, which is the redistricting process for our elementary grades because of the addition of the new Beal School, and also a little bit about full-day kindergarten and the transition to the new school. So a lot of good information that we'll be sharing with you today, and we'll get right into it. So appreciate you all being here. We'll start really with John and Sandy. In addition to being serving in a variety of roles on the school committee, you served as the school committee representatives on the redistricting committee. And this was a long process, very thorough process, because it's a challenge and it's a big puzzle to figure out when we add an elementary school, and the school committee decided it made all elementary schools K-4 with the new Beal School, how we would distribute those students across the district. So turn it over to you to talk a bit about the process and what you'd like people to know about.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Sawyer. So yeah, it was a 13-month puzzle, if you will. So hard to believe this started back in January of 2020, predating COVID. So 13-month process. The school committee commissioned a subcommittee of parent representatives from across every elementary school. You had elementary school principals and leadership, all talking about the keys to this process. It's a very complex, comprehensive process, and one of the keys to the process is the guiding principles that the school committee set forth. There are 7 in total. Obviously, first and foremost, to make sure like student educational needs are met regardless of school assignments. Also, as we know, the size of the new Beal space is really critical as well. So to make sure that we have sufficient appropriate space for instructional purposes. In addition to that, looking at kind of the neighborhood schools that align across the district, because this isn't just about Beal School, being the new Beal School, it impacts all of the elementary schools when it comes to space. So we also looked at student demographics, and then, the population growth for the future. Obviously, we want to make this future-proof, and, we want to minimize change too. I think that's the other impact. We know we're going to, shift students around as a result of there being a brand new school, but how do we minimize change as much as possible when we look across all the different scenarios? And then finally, just look at the other initiatives going on around the district to make sure we're aligned in that sense. As mentioned, we had a consultant, AppGeo, who was a tremendous partner in the process. Certainly have come a long way since 1997, since we did this the last time. I know Mr. Collins remembers the printed maps and the colored pencils, but this kind of, really turbocharges the process. And AppGeo was a tremendous partner in presenting various scenarios, allowing us to look at, what works, what doesn't work, the pros and cons of everything. So they were excellent to work with. But the keys to all of this really is the recurring communication with the community to keep them informed on what's happening, every step of the way. And we did quite a bit of community outreach, as Sandy will explain.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, John. And I think that is one of the keys to this process that made it very beneficial to the community, and I think it'll be a very successful redistricting process as well, is the community outreach. Not only did we have a lot of members on the committee, but the community outreach in the form of our virtual meetings we had over the winter added a lot more information that we didn't have in our small group meetings. And I think that, to me, and with John, was for the school committee was very beneficial. There were some things that we didn't think of as we moved through the process, especially around those neighborhoods that might be right on the line. And through those 2 forums, we had some information come to us that we did end up changing some of our thoughts on the scenarios and what was the best fit for some of those lines and where they should be drawn and what was the best fit. So at the end of that, we ended up coming out with two scenarios. We had what we ended up calling Scenario 19 and Scenario 16. And a vote was taken by the school committee on February 24th of 2021. And Scenario 19 was the one that we ultimately voted on, that we felt was the best balance of the guiding principles and the best fit for us as a community. It fit the most, the
Check
best.
the most boxes.
Check the most boxes
Yeah.
is what we called it.
Sure.
It wasn't perfect. There was not going to be a perfect balance of all the guiding principles, but we felt this was the one that was the best fit. And Scenario 16 was one that looked at socioeconomic diversity, and it was something that was one of the guiding principles and something we felt strongly about assessing and making sure that we did look at as a school committee, as a community, but it did have some other implications that didn't fit the guiding principles. And we had to make sure that there was balance, but we also had to make sure that it didn't, there was resource issues for busing, there was going to be increased busing, there would be increased time, and it wasn't supported wholly by parents as well. So in the end, it was something we did look at, but there were consequences that would not meet what the community needed. So in the long run, I think it was a good process, and it was also a very thorough process with a significant amount of communication through the community.
Thank you. Again, I think being part of it, and I know you both said it on different times, that the parent members were particularly just outstanding members. And really, it's one of the best committees I know any of us have served on during our many years in Shrewsbury, working on these kinds of things, and really appreciated their input throughout the process as well.
Absolutely,
So, thank you. In terms of where we're at now, so this decision was made by the school committee. We knew that we were hopefully going to be moving forward to this for next fall. We were in the midst of a budget crisis. We didn't know how much money we were going to have. Thankfully, the community supported the operational override recently in the May 4th town election. And so now we are secure with having the funding we need to move forward with this redistricting plan and open the new Beal. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Collins, and Patrick, ask you to talk a little bit about how we're implementing redistricting, how we're communicating about it, a lot of things that are happening right now, and it might be helpful for those watching who might be affected, interested, to understand the process we're going through.
Sure, absolutely. As you said, we had to wait for the outcome of the override vote to make sure that we were going to actually fully implement and fully open the Beal School and conduct and implement this redistricting plan, the so-called Scenario 19. And just by way of information, that Scenario 19 really reflects the number of different iterations that the redistricting committee looked at with AppGeo. So there were 19 different ones. A lot of them looked very similar but had various tweaks. But there was a lot of different scenarios that we looked at. And so now we're at the point of implementation. While we know that many parents have been paying attention to this process through the various updates to the school committee and the community forums that you mentioned, that many parents are probably still unaware. And there's a lot going on with COVID and people's lives in general. So we just dropped in the mail today. Today is May 13th. We dropped in the U.S. mail today letters to all of the currently enrolled kindergarten through grade 3 students and their parents, of course, to tell them and affirm what their elementary school assignment will be for next school year. So they should have those by Saturday or Monday at the latest. We also have a searchable map on our website in a variety of different places. People can look at this searchable map right now. They don't need to wait for their letter. They can just go to this map and zoom in on their street, and it will show them exactly which elementary school that they're being assigned to. You can use that in a kind of a zoom-in feature, or look it up by street or the parcel owner's name. So all of this information is readily available. There's no secrets about it. In fact, we're doing, kind of a proactive outreach to local real estate agents as well next week. We're going to be mailing them information about this searchable map so that as they work with families who might be moving within town into new housing for whatever reason, or people coming into town from out of state or out of town, that they're giving them an accurate place to look at in terms of if they have elementary children, what school they might be assigned to. So just a whole host of ways that we're trying to communicate this, but, those are just some of the things, and it's full-on information. I know the principals, including Mr. Girardi, will include this link to the searchable map and all their principal communications in the upcoming weeks, so that we'd hit everybody, before it actually happens. And, we're confident, we know that Dr. Sawyer and I were both working in the district at the time when Floral Street School opened, and he was part of the opening, and all of those activities to welcome the new students into Floral Street School. And we're highly confident that students will make a positive transition. And we know that there's some anxiety associated with it, but with any type of change. But students make changes in their public school education anyway when they're going from one level to the next. But we're really confident that all the principals will have welcoming atmospheres for the children when they start school for the upcoming school year. So those are some of the things that we're engaged in right now.
Thank you, Pat, for talking about that. I want to talk to Chris in a moment about some of those things that we're thinking about with you and the other elementary principals. But before we get to that, in terms of anything around full-day kindergarten that you want to be sure that people
Sure.
understand kind of what's coming and what this vote for the operational override meant and the ability to open Beal School?
Absolutely. So this upcoming school year will be, I believe, the very first official year where Shrewsbury's offering full-day, tuition-free, no-cost kindergarten to all of our children. And we were one of, I think this year, there's only 38 communities in the Commonwealth that were still charging a fee for full-day kindergarten. So that is eliminated. And that was part of the school committee's 5-year plan to kind of step down tuition with the expectation of opening up the new Beal School. So we'll have seats for everybody for full-day kindergarten. No more lottery. And we're reaching out to parents now to, in the coming days and weeks, to get them to register their children for kindergarten. So we're really looking forward to that as well. And, we'll have kindergarten, as you mentioned at the outset, at all of our elementary schools. So their elementary career, if you will be K through 4, and they'll, have those 5 years in that same school. So that's kind of new for us in Shrewsbury, is full-day kindergarten for everyone and at no cost.
So, that's a huge plus in terms of educationally. We're very pleased about that, and the burden it was placing on families for something that in over, first of all, about 97% of the state offered full-day kindergarten to everyone regardless, and then again, a very small percentage were still requiring payment. And we had families who would choose not to have full-day kindergarten because of the cost, and that's not going to be a barrier anymore, and that really kindergarten and full-day kindergarten really has become essentially a baseline expectation of public school districts at this time, in this day and age. But at this point, we have a very busy principal, Chris Girardi, who's been in charge of leading the Beal Early Childhood Center, but also working on getting ready to staff up this much larger new school. The reason it's much larger, of course, is that not only is it replacing the older Beal School, but also it's a large building because we're drawing students away through redistricting from the other elementary schools to reduce that overcrowding. But Chris, can you talk a bit about what's happening now? What's the planning? It's a very exciting time with the green light that we're moving forward. So what have you and your team been up to?
Sure. So, and I want to give kudos to our Director of Human Resources, Barb Malone, who's really spearheaded a coordinated effort across elementary schools to take a look at staffing needs, not just for the new Beal, but also at other elementary schools and pockets that are being created with some movement across buildings. So early on, what we did was we identified how many, and again, thanks to Patrick Collins for identifying how many students were going to each school, how many classrooms were needed for each grade level at each school, so that we were able to start to identify who we had as internal teachers that would be transitioning to either the new Beal school or giving them an opportunity through a survey that we provided to see if they wanted to transition to a new spot. So Barb Malone, along with principals, worked together many an hour to look at the results of that survey and to put a really thoughtful plan together around honoring people's choices as where they would want to go, and then identifying those areas where some people may need to involuntarily move. We had those conversations early this week, and we have our first round of placements set for those folks who are currently in district. And now we're looking at openings across the district that are vacant because of the growth that we are having with New Beal School and spots, vacancies that are being created by some transitions from other elementary schools.
And so when everything's finalized and we send out the roster, can you give people a sense of like how many of the teachers roughly are going to be existing Shrewsbury teachers that are going to be staffing the New Beal School versus people who are going to be new hires, brand new to Shrewsbury?
Sure. So I'd say out of the 30 classroom teachers that we're going to have, I'd say about 7 or 8 of them will be new hires. The remaining are people that are transitioning from current positions across each of the elementary schools. And I'm really thankful that at each grade level, we have some really fantastic educators who have been in the district for quite a long time and can provide that leadership role so that as we are bringing some new staff on board, they've got that leadership at that grade level.
Yeah, I mean, that's very exciting. I mean, I think people just want to make sure people don't think that, well, if my child's going to the new school, it's going to be all rookie teachers there. And there's going to be a lot of really, again, veteran teachers with strong track records of success in our schools who will be coming together to join this new community.
Another piece, if I may, Dr.
Yes, of
Sawyer,
course.
is this year we've had a real crackerjack team of long-term subs that have come in during the COVID crisis and have filled in almost, hired one day and starting fairly soon after that. And they've really cut their teeth this year, and they're folks that we're really looking to consider. So there's almost a secondary tier of teachers as we're starting our hiring process to fill those positions with people who have already shown some great skill and talent. So they can potentially be some great new hires along the way that have already have a head start along the way.
Right,
It's very exciting.
right, for sure. You'll have an assistant principal as well. I know you're in the process right now of, you have some finalists, they've come in, they've done a public forum, you're doing some site visits, they're visiting Beal. Some of that's been virtual, some of that's been in person, but I know you have some, you will know after this taping at some point, probably next week, who the new assistant principal will be at the Beal School. That'll be the second ever assistant principal at the elementary level in Shrewsbury. Yours truly was the first ever, which is something that's one claim to fame, I guess. But that's very exciting, and it's a big school. It's essentially it'll ultimately be larger than Floral Street School when it's fully enrolled at some point in the future as we get more growth in town. But it will start off at about the same size as Floral Street School with 30 classrooms, core classrooms that'll be filled. Chris, can you talk a little bit about some of your thinking around how Mr. Collins mentioned all of the kids, every school is going to be focused, the principals will be focused on making sure students who are new to that school community feel welcome as some changes happen. But obviously, this is a brand-new school community. What are some of the things that are on your mind as a principal when you think ahead to late spring, summer, going into sort of the opening phase of the school? September 1st, I believe, is the first day of school next year for students. What are some of the plans you have, I know they're not all specific yet, but kind of in a general sense, what can families expect?
Yeah, and I think that's a nice segue from the hiring of the assistant principal position. We really got on top of this one pretty quickly, and we were ready to hit the ground running after the May 4th vote, because I want to do the work with this person, both staffing the building, but also welcoming the school community. And so we have kind of some tiered approaches where we want to be connecting with our families early and often prior to until we break when we break for summer vacation. So getting out and welcoming ourselves to that community with some videos of who we are, of the building itself, of connecting with students that are currently in school, and connecting with them about, hey, Beal is your new school next year. And I'll speak for my elementary principal associates, and they're planning the same thing for students that are going to their new school. So connecting with students, if they're going from Patton to Floral Street School, of connecting with those families and making sure that they're welcome. But Beal is unique in that everybody's going to be new to that building. So over the course of the summer, we are planning some opportunities for families to visit the school, to get some tours of the school. Again, we'll be following the COVID-19 restrictions and making sure we're following the guidelines there. But we're hoping to start getting some more groups of people in to tour the building, staff included, because many staff or most staff have not seen the building other than the pictures that we see at school committee and Beal Building Committee. But to begin building community, messaging what's important about the new school, giving updates about the start of the new school year, and then really amping it up in August with having open houses, meeting the staff that are there, going into the beginning of the school year, building community around what's new and exciting about the new Beal School, the neighborhoods of each of the wings and how we've built the school and the philosophy and some of the things that make it special, and meeting our extended day folks and our allied arts folks. And it's a big school. Our job is to make it small. And making it small is communication, is being visible, of being friendly and welcoming to all families. So if they're coming out on the playground, and we're going out, we're meeting them, we're introducing ourselves and welcoming them to the new Beal School. It's a community school. We're going to be using it all year long. It's not just for people districted in that zone. Summer programming, vacation programming. We want everyone to feel welcome there.
Well, I'm confident that, Chris, you and your team, and whoever your new partner will be as a new assistant principal, and the team of educators who are going to be over there are going to do a spectacular job. And, I can say that over what has now become a pretty long career, because you can see the gray hair, in education and in Shrewsbury, going on about a quarter century now, that Floral Street School's been open almost to it. It's its 24th year, I believe. That was one of the best experiences I ever had in my career, was coming onto the scene and being part of developing a new school culture, working with the staff, people who had been in Shrewsbury and had the real sense of culture of the Shrewsbury district and its excellence, but also just the excitement of developing a new community. That's an experience that I will always really treasure in terms of my own experience in education. And so I am very excited for you and the team there to be able to have that same experience. And I know that, I remember at the time, Ellen Smith, who at the time was Ellen Fairbanks, who was the principal who hired me. I remember asking her, like, boy, aren't all these families excited to come to this brand-new, beautiful school with this beautiful nature trail in the back? And she said, well, they're happy about the new school, but they weren't that happy to be leaving the communities they were already in. At the time, of course, that was Coolidge and Spring Street and Patton. The same is true now with adding Floral Street to the mix and kids coming to this school. And we know that there are going to be families that are disappointed because they felt part of those communities. And of course, that's a good problem to have, because obviously you wouldn't want them feeling like, yeah, we're happy to be done with that school and we're going to the new school. But it's an extra challenge for Chris and his team, because, they are, there is going to be some sense of loss that they're leaving the school community they may have been in for a number of years. But I can assure people that, at that time, the students who were older, who are only going to be there for 1 year before moving on to middle school, they had a wonderful experience that year. I mean, obviously, we try to minimize transitions, and it's not optimal to have another transition in their elementary career. But I think it's going to be so special to be part of this new school at the same time. That'll be something they'll always remember. And I still talk to sometimes parents I meet around town, or even the students themselves, who are now all adults, who are like, I was in the first, at the time, fifth grade was still in elementary school. I was in the first fifth grade class at Floral Street School, and I'm sure the fourth graders at the new Beal School are going to feel the same sense of pride in leadership in that school community as well. So it's a very exciting time for the community. So with that, I think we just have a little bit of time. I'm curious, is there something in particular about the new Beal School that really stands out to you that you're particularly excited about? What's an element of bringing this new school online that from your perspective is going to be really beneficial or exciting to you?
Well, on a personal level, right? So my mom spent about 40 years of her life at the current Beal School, 20 as a volunteer and 20 as a school nurse, right? So just, the size, just the modernization of, what we call Beal School today, having toured that school about a month ago and really getting excited about the space for all the students, the views across the building, and just the sense of community you can already feel that has been brought over from the current Beal School into the new Beal, and just all the history that's being built up to really pay tribute to that building in the center of town. And as I mentioned, the school nurse's office is huge. And when they had introduced that space and said there's 2 exam rooms, I had to call my mom and let her know, like, you're not going to believe this. The closet that you were in at the current Beal is now got 2 exam rooms. So I'm excited for the town, for all the students, and especially for Chris and for his staff. to move from, what is a 100-year-old building to a brand-new facility. It's just an amazing time for the elementary level. And I'd say across the district. This is not just about the new Beal, as I mentioned. It's all the schools, all the elementary level schools that will feel this. So
Right.
that's exciting.
I think when Sean Brennan, the architect for Lamar Pagano, offered at the Beal Building Committee, if anybody wants a tour, I sent him an email that night, and
Right.
the school committee wants a tour. And we went right away, and the building it's amazing. It's just an amazing building. But like John said, I think it's the fact that we're finally getting that relief for the overcrowding, and the building it's stunning. We were blown away when we went in, and the level of technology, and I was just like, this is such a beautiful building, and the fact that this is a building for the entire community moving forward, and the fact that the override passed, this is just, everything is coming to, where we needed it to be, and full-day kindergarten for everybody. This is what we wanted, so it's a really good news story.
That's great.
I think I would say, for me, and I just happen to have the good fortune to be in the school today for another reason, but, the kind of two ends of the spectrum for me, the way that the site is spectacular, and the way that the architects have integrated the building into the site and created outdoor learning environments, and with the science curriculum in mind, and so-called, butterfly gardens, in the other gardening spaces, we can provide hands-on learning to students very easily and accessibly with the science curriculum in mind. It's not just there, it was thought about how can we actually, connect these two things. And, the great outdoor spaces, the patio outside, the media center, the outdoor learning area under that big, I think it's a copper beech tree, out by Lake Street. They did a really wonderful job of integrating outdoor spaces for the educational practice. And then on the other end of the spectrum, out front, you're going to see two electric vehicle charging stations. So, this gets kind of the old stuff like, hands-on learning and stuff that's been with us a long time that's kind of being brought back into education. And then kind of the future that we've got electric, vehicle charging stations. So those two things kind of excite me about the opening of the building.
And I'll share, you get it right when everything that you're doing has children in mind. So it's all about the students. We have great staff, we have great students. Our physical spaces have handcuffed us. And as I walk through that building and I see inclusive learning spaces, I see spaces where students, regardless of ability, can access their learning in really fun and connected ways with everyone else.
Right.
That's what's going to make that building successful. That's what's going to make that, and that's what we want in Shrewsbury. I think when I came to this district, the inclusivity of everyone was what really attracted me. The architecture of this building speaks that. It proves that's what is important for students, and that's what's going to, again, make that building a great place for everyone.
Well, all those things are, I think, very exciting, and a lot of reasons to be very proud. And I think that when I think back about when I came to Shrewsbury in 1997, and really, I was applying for some jobs in other places at the time, and took a ride up to check out this new school that was constructed. I remember walked, around the building and just said, this is, to me, what that said was, this community really cares about education. And I think what's happened in Shrewsbury since then, with what we still call the new high school in 2002, the renovation of Oak, certainly the new Sherwood Middle School, and now the new Beal School, I think it sends a very strong message to our, everyone associated with our schools that education matters. And I think that this is just another example. But the building itself, as Chris is saying, it's all in service of student learning and student well-being. And I think that, again, I just want to say how grateful I am to the whole community for approving the construction of the building in the first place, and then most recently approving an increase to their taxes to be able to fully staff it, be able to provide the elementary education at the new building as well as our other schools that our students deserve and will benefit them and will benefit the whole community. So I am just enormously grateful and very excited about the year ahead. So thank you for sharing all your perspectives. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch this episode of Superintendent's Update. We'll be providing some information certainly next year when the new school opens, and look for an opportunity to come visit and tour the school at some point once the pandemic rules are relaxed enough and we can open it up to the public for a public tour. We'll be sure to do that, and we look forward to a wonderful new school year next year with this real jewel of an elementary school coming online with the new Beal School. Thank you for watching, and take good care.